3, 2,
I'm
1.
gay. I'm gay. I'm gay. I'm gay. I'm gay. I'm gay. I'm gay.
All right. We can't. Okay. Let's see. Okay, it looks like we're live. I mean, I see it
Cool.
on my screen. So if you want
Yeah,
to see
we're up.
everything. Oh, you see it on like YouTube?
I got a notification. Yeah.
Oh, that changes the game. That changes the game completely. I didn't get it on my phone yet, so I'm gonna give it a second. Wait, is that because okay? But you for sure got the confirmation, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so you post it and then you just send it to me because I'm not getting anything.
YouTube subscriptions. Oh, that's fire. Hold on. Oh no, go back. There we go. Share. Copy link. Okay.
I feel bad for anyone who's like re-listening to this. I don't know how many people I'm really talking to right now. The reason we're quiet is because we're trying to figure out like the logistics of going live on YouTube. So, and I'm sorry, but I'm not editing this out as the Spotify version. So, skip ahead to when you start hearing NBA analysis, and then you know it'll save you some time because we're just trying to make sure everything's up to par. And then, did you send it to me or no?
Wait. Oh, it's my fault.
You're good. Did you post it? You posted it on the podcast account though, huh?
I got it.
Okay.
Sent. We're sending.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I actually think I can just copy the link from your story.
I sent it to the group chat as well.
Dope.
Got it on podcast account.
Dope.
Yeah, should be good.
All right. I'm almost done. I'm just gonna post it on mine really quick, and then we can get into the meat and bones of the episode.
Wait, Khalil, did you have a typo?
On what?
The EmMvp.
No, MVP like Embiid, but MVP. I kind of tried to mix
Oh,
it.
okay.
Kind of janky, but
Okay.
I'm almost ready.
All right.
Setting a down arrow emoji. Then your story. Okay, cool. I'm ready to record if you're ready. Not like ready to get into it if you're
I'm
ready.
good. Yeah.
The podcast. Okay, yep, I see it on the podcast account too. Dope. All right, how you doing, Ethan?
Pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good, you know. When is our last episode? You weren't on our last episode.
No.
Internet issues.
Yeah.
So the last time you were on the podcast, it's been about a month, and then me and Frank made an episode right before the playoffs started. We made our picks for the playoffs, which I think everyone's playoff picks at this point of age pretty poorly. I mean, if you were picking the Heat to beat the Bucks, I can't call you delusional anymore, but like it's a pretty crazy take at that time. We'll get more into that later, but yeah, in the senior year, college grind or going to college grind, so it's kind of getting a little busy for everyone. So we're gonna try and keep the content a little more consistent going forward. But yeah, going into it because we want to keep this episode rather concise. Talk a bit about the NFL draft. Did you watch the draft? How did you keep up with the draft? What was your experience like, Ethan?
I kept up with it by getting constant notifications by Bleacher Report and Yahoo Sports. They kept me up to date. And every time Yahoo Sports, every time a different team was up, they'd be the first to know who yada yada picks.
Oh, they were giving you like notifications.
Yeah.
I put my phone on do not disturb for the drafts. That's like
Mhm.
the only sort of event in sports where I will have my phone on D&D, just because it's like because I don't have cable, so I watch it through the YouTube live streams they do every year. I know the NFL has a live stream they do for the draft, and then ESPN does one as well. And I watch it on the ESPN one, and it's a little delayed just because it's not cable. So if
Yeah.
I even open Instagram, then it's going to be a picture of Bryce Young. This happened to me this year. Bryce Young in a Panthers jersey, and I'm still looking, and they're talking about who the Panthers could pick, and I know who the Panthers pick. So I always put
Yeah.
my phone on D&D. Probably franchise player of the week before we really get into the draft. Actually, I completely forgot about that. Ethan, you go.
Mine is he's a baseball player. Javier Baez. He's just been bad. Another person who I would have said a couple weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago ish, or not even two, like maybe 1 week ago, Juan Soto. Bro's been underperforming for his whole stay in San Diego, but recently he's been stepping up. So gotta give him credit where
I
it's due.
think I think if I remember correctly, he had some sort of big play in a recent game. I don't really keep up with the Padres that much. Um, I mean, they're cool, and I mean, it's cool that they're good now, or
Mhm.
like they're supposed to be good now. So I try my best to keep up. I know a good amount of the MLB roster. I don't know much about the AAA, AA, single A roster, but Tatis, Cronenworth, those guys, I kind of try and keep up. But even I was hearing about how Soto was struggling for a bit, and I don't keep up with baseball on a regular basis. So that's when you know it's bad. If a non-baseball fan is hearing about your struggles, then you need to get in them batting cages.
Yeah.
My poverty franchise player of the week. I mean, obviously, the obvious answer is Dylan Brooks. It's just been so rough lately. I mean, the whole he's not coming back to Memphis under any circumstances is insane. Like, I've never seen that kind of thing happen where, like, I've heard of teams like be like, oh, they're not looking to bring someone back, right? Like, can't think of an example, but all the time teams would be like, oh, we're not looking on or planning on bringing this player back in the offseason.
Yeah.
But under any circumstances is insane. Like, that's implying that say he wanted to take a minimum contract, like the most extreme pay cut ever, they're still not bringing him back. So it's like, do you have any theories as to why this happened or why they went on and said that? Because I have my idea. If you have any ideas,
I mean, it's the clear immaturity that he's been displaying recently by what he's said on the media, and then just his trash talk where he can't back it up, and just keeping on poking at LeBron. Like you can't do that.
LeBron's the
It
last
doesn't
guy.
age well. Yeah.
One of the last guys, I'll say.
hmm And it's just a bad. Memphis already has a bad media portrayal because of Jaw. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. And since Mikey committed to Memphis, and then he's under investigation.
the whole city
Yeah.
is not looking too hot right now. My theory is along the same lines as yours is. I think that even the locker room, his teammates began to feel he was a distraction at that point.
hmm
The jaw stuff, other than the whole Instagram live thing, Ja never was like doing too much like on a consistent basis. He obviously had his little slick comments like the I'm fine in the West thing, which is funny now looking back on it, but like
Yeah.
not to the extent that Dylan Brooks was doing it. Dylan Brooks was doing it in game, in the post game conferences, like it was just when you looked at Dylan Brooks this season, no one ever highlighted Dylan Brooks this season for like anything positive, really, on or off the court. So they probably viewed him as a distraction. And the thing is, Draymond Green is a distraction. as well for the Warriors. He can definitely
Mhm.
be a distraction. He has his little podcast. He's always getting his technicals and stuff like that. But the thing is, Draymond Green, and I was watching a video on YouTube about it. It was like a little chart, and it's like how good you are compared to
Oh yeah.
how good you are gives you more leverage into how
Mhm.
like annoying
How
you
much
can
you can talk. Yeah.
be. Yeah, and Draymond Green is
He
annoying.
is the line. He jumps
Yeah,
over both sides.
he is also he's not Stephen Curry, he's not LeBron, he's not the greatest player ever, but his there's clear value to him. That's why he's still in the
Mhm.
Warriors. He provides something, even if it's not the most flashy things in the world. He's a defensive player who play makes. He doesn't really put up the crazy numbers that you would expect from someone who talks that much, but he still provides some sort of value. Dylan Brooks provides no value. I mean, I won't say no value. He is a solid to good defender. He's still a good defender. He's just such an offensive zero, and he takes so many shots that it's like the defense isn't good enough to where it cancels out. It's kind of like Lou Dort in a way, where Lou Dort's defense is, he's known as one of the better defensive players in the league, especially at his position. When they had the NBA player survey, he was, up there for one of the players that people thought were like one of the best defenders. Um, but his offense is just so bad. But he also doesn't demand too many shots um, that are unnecessary. The reason Lou Dort takes a lot of shots is just because we don't have too many shot creators or scorers on the roster. The Grizzlies have Jaren Jackson Jr., Tyus Jones, Ja Morant, obviously, Desmond Bain.
Desmond Bain.
Like that's four guys who should every single night, or at least most nights, I could see a few days where Jaren Jackson Jr. takes less shots than Dylan Brooks or similar amounts. But consistently, Dylan Brooks shouldn't be taking near the amount of shots as those guys because they're just better offensive creators. Um, and Dylan Brooks just didn't understand his role or offensively, and I think that's also part of it. It's not a great fit um, on the court, and off the court, it became an issue. I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. And I've been really trying to think about like who would pick up Dylan Brooks, and I don't know completely at the moment. I thought about Houston a little bit just because it's like they're a young team. Maybe they want some person who can, add something, I guess. But
But you wouldn't want him to be a mentor for those young
yeah,
people.
he's not a veteran. He can't
Yeah.
really mentor them. He's already a pretty bad offensive player. So if you put him with Jalen Green, that's a pretty nasty offense to watch on a night to night basis. I'm not gonna lie, that's a really bad offense. Um, but yeah, I don't know who would pick him up. It's gonna be fun to see how this plays out. I don't think he's gonna end up in China, although the jokes are funny. But you know, I don't know where he's gonna end up, and I think his
Worst
value.
case, worst case scenario, he ends up in Orlando.
I don't. Yeah, that's probably the only team I can think of where he didn't really have any sort of beef with anybody, and there's no one there who's established enough to where you could be like, oh, he doesn't want him there, so we can't bring him in. Like Boncaro is great, but if Boncaro was like, I don't really like Dylan Brooks, I don't really want him here. I don't think he's really earned, that kind of,
Respect.
power on the roster yet.
Mhm.
He's not even the best player on the team. It's Franz Wagner, but anyways, yeah, I was trying to think of someone else who was really solid. I'll say Jordan Poole, and we'll get
Yeah.
into that later. Jordan Poole's my other
Yeah.
franchise player of the week. But on to the NFL draft. Who were like your biggest winners, and who is there any teams that you felt really didn't take advantage of the draft too well?
Um, the Eagles drafting a bunch of Bulldogs. That's crazy.
As a Giants fan, I'm scared, very scared. When you talk about like the rich getting richer, that's like a prime
Mhm.
example. I thought Jalen Carter was the best player in the class, offensive or defensive. I mean, obviously, when you don't take into account of positional value, you could make an argument for like a Bijan Robinson being the best player in the class, just because he is a really good running back prospect.
Yeah.
Uh, but in combination of positional value and talent, Jalen Carter to me was just the best defensive player in the class. I think Will Anderson is really good, but I thought Jalen Carter was a league above that. And for the Eagles to get him at 9, a great fit. Obviously, you can bring up like the character concerns, but there's literally not a better place I think for him to go. I mean, if you're concerned with character concerns, he already has 2 former teammates on the team. They brought in 2 more, so there's 4 guys who've already known this guy for a while. Then you got Jason Kelsey, who immediately kind of took a role as a mentor, I think, at the draft. So it's a good, environment for him to foster or to grow as a person because the talent's going to be there. No question, the
Yeah,
talent.
for sure.
Fletcher Cox, someone who's going to play his position. He can learn from him on the field and I'm sure off the field. So I think it's a good spot for Jalen Carter to end up at.
I think a big winner in the draft though is the Seahawks.
Oh yeah,
They
definitely.
laughed. They landed arguably the best corner. It's either Devon Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez, and then arguably the best receiver in JSN. And
JSN is probably the best receiver, I'd say. I mean, I think he's the only receiver with like any sort of number one potential. I think maybe a little bit of Zay Flowers, but like a Quentin Johnson, I don't really see as a number one receiver at any point. Um, but yeah, I love I love the pick. I mean, as an unbiased just sports person, I love the pick. I hated the pick as a Giants fan because literally on my story, on my close friends, I said Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Jordan Addison. And then I also
they did.
said one more person. I was like, they are all available. We're 6 picks away from the Giants pick. We're gonna get one of them. I'm ecstatic. And then literally all of the receivers got picked one after another, and I was like, dang. My only hope was the Vikings not taking one.
Yeah.
And I'll speak on them. I thought the Vikings. I can only speak on the round one draft because I wasn't paying too much attention to like the later rounds. But I didn't like the Jordan Addison pick. I mean, with how bad the defense was,
Really?
I think you kind
Yeah.
of got a good defense first round. Um, I'm sure they addressed it in this what's it called, the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds. But I mean, when you have Joey Porter Jr. still available, Brian Branch, I'm pretty sure up to that point, maybe Christian Gonzalez just got taken, but Christian Gonzalez might have been taken or might have been available. Nolan Smith. There was defensive talent there that I think could have been a little more impactful. I mean, even Deontay Banks, who the Giants took, could have been a good pick for them, especially because they lost Patrick Peterson. Um, forget their other corner's name. I think it's Cam Dantzler, but I'm not too sure. But they lost a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and they really didn't address that too well in the draft.
I mean, I think to be fair, their best option with that first round pick was Jordan. Honestly,
Like talent,
like strictly talent wise, yeah.
that's
Like
fair.
ignoring fit, he's the best option
Yeah,
because at least they get that Thielen replacement and they can help Justin Jefferson out a little bit.
you give them
So if
someone.
anything, yeah,
Uh,
if anything, they just go on shootouts each game. It's going to be annoying because they have one of the worst defenses in the league. But I think they're hoping just the shootout.
yeah, I mean, that's got to be what they're thinking. I mean, they didn't really address the need, so there's no other way of thinking. I just think there was defensive talent that could have been taken. I'm looking at who they picked. So Jordan Addison was 24. Right after them, the Giants take Deontay Banks. Miles Murphy goes to the Bengals. Brian Brees or Brzee, I don't know how to say his name, goes to the Saints, and then Nolan Smith out of Georgia goes to the Eagles. So I mean, that's a good group of defensive guys. Another team that I think this is probably my biggest loser of the draft, at least the first round. I didn't like the Lions' first round at all. I thought it was really bad. I mean, I understood Bijan Robinson before the draft was getting a lot of noise about being like a higher picked running back. I still don't really like picking running backs high, but if he's a generational talent, I'll give you a pass that time. Obviously, the Falcons pick up Bijan Robinson at, I believe, 8. And I guess the Lions were like, you know what? They picked a running back high, so why don't we? It's 2018, I guess. And they took Jahmyr Gibbs, who I've heard is a really good running back too. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but some people say that they think he's better than Bijan Robinson. They're two completely different players, but at 12, you take someone who's probably going to be available with your second round pick, barring you don't take them. And it was also just a dumb pick. I mean, obviously now we know they were probably already talking about trading DeAndre Swift. But at the time it looked really dumb because they had DeAndre Swift and they just brought in David Montgomery. So it's like you guys brought in 2 running backs. Then you drafted your third string? You drafted the third down back at the 12th pick. Then they also took a linebacker, which I mean, it addresses a need. They needed a linebacker, but like
It's
it's
a
not a
weak
good.
linebacker class in the first place.
Yeah, so I think the value would have been there at a later pick.
Yeah.
As far as I'm trying to see who was available at their pick. I mean,
Um,
Kalijah
I,
Kancey looks really solid. Jackson Smith and Jigba, all the receivers were still on the board for them. I don't know if they would have looked at receiver because they do have Jamison Williams, Amon Ra, St. Brown, and then they brought in I don't remember. They brought in another receiver. I forget the name though. So maybe they wouldn't have gone receiver, but I don't know if I really rock with a linebacker who's not really first round value or a running back who's first round value. So I think they were a pretty decent loser.
I think.
I'm trying to think. Any winners
Huh?
other
What's
than
up?
the Eagles? Any other winners? Any other winners than the Eagles?
Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers.
Fair. I
I
think
think
it's
they
really
are.
cool that Jimmy Porter ends up playing for his dad plays for. I think that
Yeah.
was really cool. Um, let's talk about the top of the draft. I mean, it was pretty interesting.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked about overall teams, but as far as the top picks, the guys who everyone was talking about, first pick Bryce Young. How are we feeling about that? If you had to give it a grade, what are you thinking about the Bryce Young pick?
I mean, can't really give it anything other than an A, in my opinion, because they could have went with anyone and it would have been fine. But I think it benefits Bryce the most because he has the most weapons around him. And if I
Yeah,
was a
it's the
rookie
best
quarterback,
landing
then
spot.
I would want to go. Yeah, I would want to go to the Panthers versus the Texans.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think of any other team that was really like in a quarterback kind of like they could pick a quarterback kind of position. The only team that might have been a better landing spot is Detroit, but you wouldn't have played in Detroit. That's the thing. You would have been a backup. But then again, that has its perks. I mean, you get to learn under a pretty solid quarterback in Jared Goff for a year or two. So Detroit could have been a better landing spot. But other than Detroit, it was pretty thin. I mean, Houston's a pretty bad roster, although I like what they did in the offseason and in the draft. But in general, not a crazy great landing spot for a rookie quarterback. If I had to grade the young pick, I definitely lean A. I think he's the highest upside quarterback in the class.
For sure.
Um, Going to a good landing spot, good coach. So I mean, I don't see there's any way he's terrible. I mean, I think in the long run we could look back on this pick and it's not the best pick in the world, but going into next year, I'm pretty comfortable with what the Panthers did with the first pick. Um, as for Stroud at number 2, how are we feeling about that?
Like a B plus, A minus, because it addresses one of their needs, which is a big thing. And they could have went with anyone, but like anyone as in Richardson or Stroud, because
Mhm.
Levis fell. They clearly didn't pick Levis because they traded up for 3 and they could have taken him, But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think teams liked Levis exactly, but
yeah,
Stroud
I
or
don't.
Richardson is what it comes down to.
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's different. I think the thing with Stroud is like the I don't know. I was just kind of low on Stroud. He kind of grew on me a little bit more, but just like the reliance on talent is something I'm a little skeptical of.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't want, like we were talking about with Bryce Young, I think Houston is a terrible landing spot for most quarterbacks, although their offseason was pretty decent. Um, but like for CJ Stroud, who's going from pretty much the most talented offense in college football, um, going to probably one of the least talented offenses in the NFL. Um, Pretty drastic change in scenery. I mean, he's not a terrible quarterback by any means. He's really solid, and I think when he really just like plays up to his potential, he can really be effective. Although he has the like Jared Goff player comp, let's not bash Jared Goff. He's not a terrible quarterback. It's a pretty solid baseline. I think he can actually be better than Jared Goff because the accuracy is so good. And when he really wants to move out of the pocket, he can. He's pretty mobile. He just chooses not to be. But I think the rookie season could be rough for Stroud, just because the quality of talent in comparison to your opponents is just it changes so drastically, and I think that could be an issue. I'm not going to write him off because I do get it. I mean, you go from like I said, one of the best offenses in college football to one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So I'm probably leaning more B plus than A, but that's literally just because I don't think he's gonna have the greatest rookie season ever to me.
Yeah.
Um, Houston moves up to Houston moves up. I don't know where they moved up from. I think they traded a second actually to get. They traded a second, and I think they actually traded their first next year to get the number 3 pick this year from Arizona.
They
They
traded with
took
the Cardinals,
take.
right?
Yep. Will Anderson Jr. How are we feeling about that pick?
I mean, I didn't watch too much on Will Anderson, but like a B plus ish because again, it fits one of their needs,
and it gets
helps their defense.
that they're trying.
They want Stingley too.
I think I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Sting.
And that's a corner piece.
But they get the edge in Will Anderson. Hopefully, he transitions easily into the NFL. But I'm not exactly sold on him. Like, it's just me, but I'm not too sold on Will Anderson's hype. What do you think?
Cool. I mean, I like the pick. He's one of the better. Second best defensive player in the class. Can't be too mad at it. And it definitely, like you said, it builds some sort of identity for the defense. They address building an identity for the offense, and then they build an identity for the defense. So, it's kind of just how you do things, I guess, in the NFL. You want to get your quarterback, you want to get your edge rusher. That's kind of how things lean nowadays. So I'm not too mad at it. I think if you're a Texans fan, you can't be too mad at it either. Again, I think Jalen Carter's better, but obviously teams were concerned with the issues off the field. So I can't be too mad they didn't take Jalen Carter because I see a reason as to why they didn't. I'd probably say B plus, just because I do think the pick is fine. It's just there was a better player available that I think most people would agree was the better player. So
Yeah.
I'll go B plus. Not a bad pick.
Did your screen go black?
No, I'm still fine. That's just you.
Oh, okay.
We'll do a couple more picks before we move on to the NBA. But
Right.
Anthony Richardson to Indianapolis, how are we feeling about that?
Might as well. Very more like a B plus ish because he's going to be a project quarterback, and the upside of him and JT in the backfield at the same time on read options is insane. That's going to be scary. Like, imagine doing that on Madden. Like,
Read
just
option.
standing read options. It's going to be disgusting.
I would probably give it just a flat B. I think you draft someone who's closer to being a project quarterback than a day one solidified starter quarterback, with the expectations of having him start week one. Another quarterback who I think could end up having a not too great rookie year, just because I do think Anthony Richardson is a little more raw as a prospect. So might take him a little bit of time.
He needs more what's the word that I'm looking for? Higher speed reps.
Oh, okay, more reps.
Yeah, like he needs the reps because he only started 1 year at Florida, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
that was his last year. Yeah. He just needs to see the field more and just get the exposure, get the experience, get the snaps. That's the only way he's going to develop.
But I will say, and this might move it up to an A, actually, to me. I didn't even think about this. Eagles head coach is Shane Steichen, who was the Eagles Colt head coach is Shane Steichen, who was the Eagles offensive coordinator, who obviously worked with Jalen Hurts. So,
the Jalen Hurts run the ball.
Yeah, so he knows how to design an offense around a quarterback who's, who has, running in his game and things like that. And let's be honest, Anthony Richardson has a huge arm, like a better arm than Jalen Hurts at this point. So he's got a lot of things to play with, and I'm excited to watch the Colts. So I guess that's a plus. Who's ever excited
to pick up Michael Pittman on my fantasy team again?
Yeah. For a dynasty league, pick up Anthony Richardson. We'll skip Devon Witherspoon because you said the Eagles were a winner.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Bijan Robinson pick, I guess, a little bit. Number 8, Atlanta. They have other needs. They still go Bijan Robinson. How would you grade it?
I mean, just strictly for position value, like a C, because history speaking, you don't draft a running back that high because, it's a running back. And they already had a running back in their room with Tyler Algier, who went crazy last year. He had a sneaky good season. Like, nobody gave him recognition.
I think he had 1,000 yards.
Yeah, he did. He's crazy.
I don't like the pick at all.
Yeah.
It's just like you have a good, solid running back already. who you drafted. I don't know what round they drafted him, but they drafted. And then you draft another running back. So I don't know what the benefit to that is when you have other needs. Again, Jalen Carter was available. I'm going to say that for pretty much everyone who passed on him. Jalen Carter was available. Um, you bring him to Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta is in Georgia, so I presume he would be around some people he knows already in an environment he's comfortable. But maybe part of that is you want to get him away from all that, where everything happened. You want to move him as far away from that as possible. So I get it in that aspect. I would probably lean C with you as well. And just, you already have Algier. Why not, maybe get a weapon for Ritter or find some sort of weapon defensively. I mean, I thought they could have gone after corner and put someone on the other side of AJ Terrell, and that would have been interesting. But like running back, just like you said, you don't draft a running back early. There's such a replaceable position. So I don't know if you had any other teams or picks that you felt passionate about that you wanted to touch on.
The Raiders drafting Tyree Wilson.
Oh yeah, how'd you feel about that?
Extremely long arms. I feel like it's great. And then because it helps us make up for Cleveland Farrell because he was a bust.
And
He's
it makes
trash.
sense if you guys make up for what's his name? He was on the Cardinals and now he's on the Raiders.
Chandler Jones.
Jones. He was not
Yes.
good last year at all.
He was injured for like majority of the year. So yeah,
Very bad contract. I don't know what
no
you guys,
value.
but yeah, I like it. It definitely addresses a need. Hopefully it's a good pick for the Raiders and there's no sort of criminal issues for Tyree Wilson down the line, as you guys have a kind of
A rich history in
drafting people who end up making some poor decisions off the field. But I think this one might work out. I also thought it was really funny that the Raiders didn't draft Jalen Carter, and it's just because it's like they're like, we always have people who end up in trouble, not drafting another guy who could end up in trouble. So I can't be mad at them. If I'm not, the team I'm least mad at for not drafting Jalen Carter is probably the Raiders, because it's just like I get it. Y'all have been down that path too many times. Don't keep trying it. Definition of insanity is trying something over and over and expecting a different result. So
crazy. The Raiders also drafted Michael Mayer. In my opinion, one of the better tight ends in the draft. He was, Darren Waller replacement. He was the second tight end off the board. Dalton Kincaid out of Utah was the first one.
Went to Buffalo.
Yeah. I like it because obviously we needed a replacement for Darren Waller for trading him for no reason. I don't know why.
That was, but
got scammed. He should still be here. And yeah, I felt like it was a good pick. Oh, my fault. He was the third tight end off the board. Sam Laporta out of Iowa.
Oh, that's right. Where did he end up?
Right before him. Detroit.
Okay, Laporta went to Detroit. Kincaid went to Buffalo, and then Mayer went to Oakland or Las Vegas. Jesus, Oakland is crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all I really want to touch on as for the draft. Will Levis to Tennessee, I guess it's cool. Biggest loser of the draft, Malik Willis. You get drafted to be
Will Levis. You said Malik Willis.
No, Malik Willis is the biggest loser of the draft.
Oh yeah.
Drafted last year, you're expected to kind of be a project quarterback, given some time to grow, and then they draft the replacement. You got replaced as the replacement, which is so crazy. Yeah. You're the third string now, which is really crazy. And Ryan Tannehill. That's one thing that I think is really funny about sports. It's like, if you have a regular job and they hire someone new, it's not like they're hiring your replacement. It's just they're hiring someone to work with you. No, if a team drafts your position, you're pretty much getting told that you're getting replaced. Like your job is gone. And that's like one thing that I just could not do as a professional athlete. That's so stressful, like not knowing if you're going to be there or where you're going to be. So,
I mean, like every practice though, like with the team is a tryout.
Yeah.
Like that's how it is.
To, make some sort of impact. Who knows? Maybe Ryan Tannehill will move back to wide receiver. They clearly need a wide receiver, so I wouldn't put it past them. They need it.
They're probably going to run the ball 200 times. It's fine. They don't need to
go out there and block. I'm sure Ryan Tannehill can do that. But yeah, you want to move on to the NBA?
Not yet. There's one more thing that I want to touch up on, if I can find it. Where is it? Oh, what are your thoughts on the Giants draft?
From top to bottom, I'd say it's pretty good. I mean, Deontay Banks was a cool pick. I knew nothing about him before draft day. But I did my research. He looked really solid, rangy, press man corner fits our defensive system. Second round, we get a center who was arguably the second to best center in the class. A lot of people had us taking the center we took in the second round in the first round. So two people who were, projected first round picks. Then in the third or the late second, I don't remember, we trade up and get a receiver, Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. I don't think he's the most insane receiver. He's a little reliant on speed, and he played in
He's a speed demon.
in that Tennessee kind of vertical offense, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But we did need someone who could kind of take the top off of defenses and could stretch the field vertically. And we always talk about how Daniel Jones can't really stretch the field. He can. I mean, when we had John Ross, specifically a game we had against the Saints, there were a few plays where he really tested it deep. It just helps to have those guys who have like great speed and can space the floor, make the safeties have to play deeper. It also makes him more of a threat as a runner. So I like that pick. Anything past those three guys, I don't really know who we drafted. I was at work that day, so I didn't really pay too much attention to it. But, I've looked at all the draft grades for the Giants, and it seems like everyone thinks we did good, so I'm going to have to agree.
Okay, cool. Oh, another reason why I think the Seahawks were a winner in the draft, they picked up defensive end Derek Hall out of Auburn. I always end up with dude in my fantasy seasons, or not in my franchises.
He finishes with X Factor, huh? Or Superstar.
Yeah, dude's a dog. But, I watched some film on him because I kept on picking him in my leagues, and I'm like, might as well learn about him, right?
Yeah.
Dude is a run stopper. He can hit. He's tough. But he's more of like a finesse type guy. Huh? What's up?
Got him in the third round?
Second round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's tough.
Killed it. The Seahawks killed it. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to play the slot. The best receiver in the class is going to play the slot with two other good receivers, and then they arguably get the best corner in the class. So they really killed it. I mean, Seahawks, Eagles are probably the two where I'm looking at like, yeah, y'all really killed it. I'll say the Texans to an extent. You did as good as you really got two really talented guys. Your roster needed talent. So those three teams really killed it to me. And then the only team I'm really looking at where I'm like, dang, you guys really folded was the Lions and to an extent the Texans. Not the Texans, the Falcons.
I mean, the Lions, they made up for it, I guess, with a Brian Branch pick at safety.
Yeah, that was a great steal.
But Jameer and the linebacker in a week.
Not a great start. You could have got more value in those early rounds, and I just think they missed out on that opportunity.
Yeah.
I also believe they took Hendon Hooker. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they took Hendon Hooker later on in the fifth round. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they did.
So that's a cool landing spot. So, and he's injured anyway, so it doesn't really matter that he's going to sit behind Jared Goff for a year. So I'm trying to think. I thought I had something to say. No, I didn't. Yeah, but Detroit and Atlanta can't get behind the running back picks.
Denver.
What did they even take? Did they have their picks? Because I feel like they traded their picks to Seattle, so they couldn't have done that much. You blacked out for me, but you good? Nope, you lagged out. All right, so Denver must have not killed it at the draft. I don't really know. He lagged out, so can't really speak on that too much because I wasn't paying attention to the Broncos. He's not back. I'm trying to think. I had literally something to say about the draft, and it just really escaped me. I didn't like Quentin Johnston. I thought that was a really dumb pick for the Chargers. I mean, he was probably my number one receiver on the board back in like maybe December, and then as you're back. Quentin Johnston, not a great pick. You're good. But yeah, didn't love the Quentin Johnston pick for the Chargers. You were talking about Denver.
Oh, yeah, I genuinely don't remember them making any picks.
They didn't have their first round pick, and I don't think they had their second round pick. So their first pick was the third round because of the Russell Wilson trade.
No, their
By
first
the
pick
day,
was the second round, late second.
yeah. So
It's like Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma, and then Drew Sanders out of Arkansas.
yeah, not great. Marvin Mims. You said Marvin Mims.
Yeah.
He was getting some hype, so maybe he's good. I don't really know. I didn't do as much research as I would have hoped about the draft. I really stick to the top, and it's just hard. The NFL draft is really hard to analyze because you never really know who's going to be good like that. You can take a really educated guess, but it's way harder than basketball, where you can point to certain things and see how a player, you know, fits on a team more so than you can in football. Um, but on to the NBA. You want to start playoffs? Let's start playoffs. Let's start
Let's go
playoffs.
playoffs.
So we are in the second round currently. First time in NBA history where you have one of every seed, which is really cool. Obviously, you have the 1-seeded Nuggets, 2-seeded Celtics, 3-seeded Sixers, 4-seeded Suns. 5 is
Lakers
New York. 5 is
or
New
New
York.
York.
6 is the Warriors. 7 is the Lakers. 8 is the Miami Heat. I mean, what series do you want to start with? Because there's a lot of ways we can go.
Let's start with the. Let's go Sixers.
Sixers Celtics.
Sixers Celtics.
All right, they're currently playing right now, and I got to pull up the score. But when I last checked, it's a Celtics blowout right now. Celtics are up by 20. But as for the first game, we saw James Harden, masterclass. James Harden drops 45. Very vintage, almost James Harden game. Very efficient and all that. And they steal a game on home floor. So can't really be mad at it. But going forward, what are you looking for a Celtics Sixers series, and what do you think are the defining factors in deciding who wins and who do you have winning ultimately?
I mean, what's going to come down is Embiid and Harden. I emphasize that a lot, like specifically for basketball, because each game matters. Like you only have 7 games to do this. You're not even 7, like 4. You can get swept.
Yeah.
And the difficulty on roads is like just the constant flights. They're not constant, but the flights,
Constant.
I guess.
Pretty much constant. Like,
Yeah, they're not too far. It's Boston and Philly. Yeah,
yeah. They might
it's
be
not the
taking
worst.
bus, to be honest. I don't know.
Mhm.
They might take the bus. I'm not too sure.
I wouldn't be surprised, but the veteran experience and playoff experience is going to come into play. The Celtics have done this before. Like they went to the chip last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come down to execution, and yeah.
I think I agree with you as far as availability. It was a big question to start. Embiid obviously had the little knee issue in the first round. He was given 9 days. They went 9 days without playing because they were the first team to end their series. So they had a little week-long break before the Celtics series. He missed game 1. They still win. He comes back today. So he's back. So it seems like they're available. I don't know. Looking at his counting stats, he's got 15 points. He has 5 blocks and 3 rebounds. So, I mean, you obviously can't just look at the box score. You got to watch the game to kind of get an idea of how well he's actually playing. But counting stats wise, he looks really solid. But, overall, not a great, game. James Harden is shooting 15%.
15%.
Yeah. So that might be the reason why the Sixers are not winning right now. But as for the whole series, I think it comes down to, again, like you said, availability, coaching. I think both of these coaches are not awful, but not great either. I think Doc Rivers is kind of hit or miss at times. And then not Ime Udoka, whatever the Celtics coach's name, Joe Mazzulla. I think he can be kind of hit or miss as well. So it comes down to the adjustments the teams decide to make and how they decide to address, what they see on any given day. Clearly, whatever adjustment they made on Harden is working because he went from dropping 45 to being one of the least efficient players with a minus 20 plus minus. So as for pick, I don't feel great about either of these teams. I mean, Philly had a pretty good series against Brooklyn. Obviously, you sweep them. That's the best result you can really get. But you got to take into account the Embiid injury and if that's something that's going to linger. They're also not the deepest team, so you kind of look at that, and I'm not too sure where the bench production is going to come from on a lot of nights. Obviously, you have Tyrese Maxey, who can really light things up off the bench, but he's more of like a starter. He comes
He's
off the
not
bench, but he plays starter minutes. I mean, outside of those guys, they don't really have a lot. Whereas Boston is really, really deep. Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Al Horford, Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, Mike Muscala, Grant Williams. Like that's 8 guys I just named who can, you know, no one. A lot of that group's not giving you 30, but like, they can all provide something on a consistent basis. And like you said, experience. Boston. I was just looking at this on StatMuse. I think Boston has like the second or third most wins since 2016 in the whole NBA. Finals last year. They've been in the playoffs consistently since like 2018.
They went to the Eastern Conference Final
3 times.
Yeah.
They went to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat in the bubble, against LeBron and the Cavs when he went on his crazy 2018 tear. 2019, no, it wasn't 2019 because the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals was between the Bucks and the Raptors. But last year, they make it to the finals, as you say. So they've been through a lot of playoff games. Tatum's young, but he has a lot of playoff experience. Brown also a lot of playoff experience. So I think they have a good balance of the actual veteran leadership who have been in the NBA for a long time, and just guys who have a lot of playoff experience, in combination with the depth and the less concern I have with their health. I would probably lean Boston in 7. But it's a toss up, like I said, in 7. So it could very well be Philly in 7. I think Joel Embiid has been the most dominant player offensively in the league this year, and if Harden's going to give you those kinds of games, I mean, he might give you trash games like this, but if every once in a while you could get a good 30, that's 2 really good scores. So I would never count them out. But history says Boston, so I'm gonna go with Boston in 7.
I'm leaning Boston in a scrappy 7. Like, it's obviously going to go back both ways. But, yeah.
You think rest plays a factor?
For sure.
Boston
because
played a 6 game.
The Sixers are going to rely a lot on rest, specifically for Embiid, because they need him healthy for this whole series. If he goes out, then the Sixers are done. I mean, you can't really say that they're done because game 1, without Embiid, they took it.
I wouldn't bet on that happening again, though. I hope. I mean, Boston, even in the Atlanta series, they had the Hawks without DeJounte Murray in a closeout game, and they did not, take advantage. They actually ended up losing. So, I mean, Boston's been kind of, iffy, especially later in the year. For the last, month and a half of the year, they were kind of iffy. They had a little losing streak where they lost, 5 in a row. So, they're not invincible. So,
they need to take it. Go ahead.
I wouldn't count out Philly.
Yeah.
But, historically, Boston, seems like they'll get it done.
They need to take advantage of when star players are out.
They have to.
Being shown when they play the Hawks. The Hawks shouldn't have taken 2 games from them. It should have only been 1 most.
Yeah.
And, just playing poorly without the other team's best player, especially and they're a presence in the paint.
Yeah, you got to
take advantage of those things. Yeah,
no question. And it's a home game. Like if they would have lost the Sixers without Embiid and they were in Philly, I'd be a little less upset about it because it's an away game. So obviously, typically you're gonna get better, performances out of your role players, at home rather than on the road. But at home, you lose to the other team without their best player. That's inexcusable, pretty much. So. And for you guys to allow James Harden to score 45 with all of the defensive personnel you have, not a great look either. You have a lot of guys who can guard. Tatum, Brown, Smart, Derek White, Grant Williams can play defense. And then obviously in the paint, as kind of your safeties over the top, you got Robert Williams and Al Horford. So, I mean, you got to Obviously, they made some sort of adjustment this game. When I go back and watch it, I'll be able to see what exactly they changed in comparison to the first game. But you know, that's just something you can't really do, and it definitely hurts my confidence in the Celtics. I was very big on like the champion is going to come out of the East this year, but Milwaukee, who was my finals pick, gets eliminated in the first round, and Boston hasn't looked as great as I would have hoped up to this point. So not too confident. If it wasn't for, I don't want to say a weak remainder of the Eastern Conference, but definitely a lower quality remainder of the Eastern Conference, I would have a lot more questions about Boston. But Philly's the biggest challenge left. This is pretty much the Eastern Conference Finals, I would imagine, because I would take Boston pretty comfortably over Miami or New York, and we could shift over to that series.
Yeah, let's go over there.
Starting with Miami, they absolutely just dominate Milwaukee in 5. Um, I've heard a lot of excuses like, Giannis was hurt for a couple games. They beat the Bucks with Giannis a couple times as well, so that kind of cancels itself out. I look forward to seeing what the Bucks do in the offseason. I think Mike Budenholzer is fired. Like you got to fire him. Other than the one finals win the Bucks have, his tenure with the Bucks has been pretty underwhelming. They have the series against Toronto where they can't find some sort of counter to just going in the paint with Giannis. The Raptors build a wall and they just can't do anything offensively. And then you have the series against who did they lose to last year? I forget. Whoever they lost to last year, the coaching wasn't great. He's just not a great coach.
They lost to the Celtics, I think, right?
They did lose to the Celtics last year. Wasn't, obviously they were without Chris Middleton, but at some point you got to kind of put that on coaching. He didn't make great adjustments. His timeout choices were kind of poor. He had 3 timeouts in the fourth quarter and overtime of the deciding game 5, where they lose to Miami. And obviously Miami's going on a run. He doesn't, call a timeout to kind of cool them off, make some sort of adjustment. I know I did hear that he recently has gone through a loss in the family, and maybe that contributes to it. Maybe you're just not on your A game at the moment, but past that, even in the past, he hasn't been the most spectacular coach. So I think you got to let him go. I would like to see them pick up Nick Nurse, who was with Toronto, obviously a great coach, the best coach who's available up to this point. But as for Miami, Jimmy Butler, I think you got to start with him. He's been the best player in the playoffs. I think you would agree, huh?
For sure. He's like, it's not even a question.
Yeah,
he steps up during the playoffs, per usual. Like, the playoffs are meant for Jimmy Butler. I think you could say the same thing for RJ Barrett too. Like he does nothing in the regular season, but he just turns up in the playoffs.
Just a little bit. I think he played really good last game. I watched that game. Really ugly. Obviously, as for the last game, no Jimmy Butler. He sprained his ankle late in game 1. Played through it, but he couldn't play to yesterday. It was a really ugly game. It was one of those games where how people say like good defense, better offense.
Yeah.
It was like that, but in reverse. It was like bad defense, worse offense. Both teams were getting a lot of good looks, but teams just couldn't capitalize. The Knicks got 0 bench production up until the fourth quarter, late third into the fourth. They really didn't get any production from Jalen Brunson up until like the late third, fourth. It was strictly Julius Randle, who just came back from his ankle injury, and he looked really good, really efficient. Looked like the ankle wasn't bothering him at all. And then RJ Barrett was really good. He hit a lot of he had like 4 or 5 threes actually. He was able to space the floor. He was aggressive. He got to the line, and I like seeing that from him. And he actually kind of brought it defensively a few times. So, but Miami kind of does what Miami does without Jimmy Butler. They went by committee. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Kevin Love, those guys, they all kind of pitched in a little bit individually. One player who I was very disappointed in, and I've been very disappointed in up until this point in the playoffs, is Bam Adebayo. He's so good on defense. The offense is just often like a 0. I don't want to say he lost his matchup with Mitchell Robinson. I would say they were pretty much even as for game 2. But he just didn't have the impact that I would hope from someone who's getting paid as much as he is. Kyle Lowry wasn't good. Duncan Robinson hit a couple threes, but
for saying Kyle Lowry wasn't good, I think the expectation kind of lowered.
Yeah, he's
kind of bad recently.
Yeah, that's the thing. when you look at Miami, they have so many of their contracts or how so much of their money tied into players who don't really play up to that level. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo to an extent offensively, and then Tyler Hero, who's hurt. He's a
Injured.
great player, but he's like a sixth man, so you're paying your
Yeah.
sixth man too much money, so it's a little questionable.
How do you have the
That's
series going down?
I'm really wishy washy on it. The Knicks didn't look good yesterday without Jimmy, and when the Heat did have Jimmy, they lost. But then again, they also didn't have Julius Randle for the Knicks, so it's kind of hard to say up until we get a game where both teams are relatively healthy and have their star players. I would probably end up going New York in 7, just because I do think they're deeper. They have the defensive talent and versatility that maybe not on the level of the Bucks, but they still have defensive players who can contribute. Um, and I think it comes down to depth. The Heat are already not a deep team at all. They lose Victor Oladipo, they lose Tyler Hero. They're really running it thin. Obviously, they've gotten some good performances from like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent up to this point, but how long can you really bet on them keeping up their hot shooting streak? I would rather bet on the solidified guys who looked really good in their first round series against Cleveland. Mitchell Robinson is a big difference maker on the offensive glass, and I think he's done a good job of handling Bam Adebayo. Josh Hart, one of my favorite role players in the league. He does so many of the little things. Great rebounder, great assist, great passer, so I'd probably lean New York. Who do you have?
I got New York in 7 probably, simply because if both teams are healthy, that's a big if. But if both teams are healthy, then the Knicks could probably steal one from the Heat. He could steal one from the Knicks. It's just going to go back and forth. But I trust the Knicks more because, like you said, they have the depth compared to the Heat. The Knicks can dish out more scoring, I think, than the Heat can. And sure, the Heat has the defense with Bam, but it doesn't matter if they're going to be scoring outside.
Right. And they have so many guys who can give you a good 15 to 20 point game. I mean, when you look at Miami, the only people who I trust to give me 20 on any given night is Jimmy Butler, Bam, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus on a good night. And then if we're really pushing it, Kyle Lowry, if he gives you a pretty solid performance, can possibly give you 20. Kevin Love, if he that then we're like really pushing it. Kevin
That's
Love
pushing it.
for the Knicks, I really think Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett can all comfortably give you that. Emmanuel Quickly can give you more than 20. Emmanuel Quickly can give you 40 if he really wants to. Probably won't in the playoffs. So that's 4 guys who have elite scoring talent. Josh Hart, if he gets hot behind the arc, can give you a nice little 17 to 20. Obi Toppin can get hot and give you something. Isaiah Hartenstein can maybe not score, but he made some plays on the glass. So they just have a lot of guys who can contribute offensively, and they don't, sacrifice any sort of defense. So that's why I'm leaning Knicks.
Let's jump once.
Knicks. Yeah, well, really quick, Knicks, Boston. Boston in what?
Boston in 6.
Okay, Boston in 6. Okay, so we have the Celtics in the finals up to this point.
Yeah.
Going to the West. Let's start with the Nuggets and the Suns. Nuggets take the first 2. Nuggets are obviously your team. How are you feeling going into game 3, which is tomorrow or Friday? I'm not too sure.
I believe it is tomorrow. It's tomorrow. But I don't know. I feel we're playing good team basketball and isolating the great players, the scorers of the Suns. Like that's pretty much what Nuggets basketball is. It's just a bunch of team play, where if everyone does their thing, we're good. Like even in game 2, Jamal had like 10 points, I believe.
Not a good.
He still came out with the win. Yeah, not a good Jamal game, but came out with the win. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And
part of that is how, not to interrupt you, but part of that is how well Christian Braun played defense on Kevin Durant. He really did thing. He's not going to get probably not going to get a all rookie team, but he's just been really solid as a role player.
Yeah.
he can provide offensively as a floor spacer, kind of get to the rim a little bit, but defensively he also brings it. And I think he's pretty solid. I like Christian Braun; he's pretty cool. So
he should have won Rookie of the Year. I'm just saying. Okay, but
over for sure.
it's all about what you bring to the table and doing your job. Like, you tell Christian Braun to guard Devin Booker, he'll guard Devin Booker. Like, just do your job.
He's willing to do what they need to do to win.
Yeah,
I
that's
also
pretty
think
much what it is.
I think this series is similar in a way to the Knicks and the Heat, where the Suns, it's different in a way because the Suns have like two elite scorers who can like really, really go off. Like they can give you 60, 70 if they really wanted to. Like, yeah. They can combine for 80 any given night. But they don't have any depth. The depth is really bad. I don't know what the extent of Chris Paul's injury is, but he got hurt last game. Groin injury that's been lingering for the last few years. The dude's 38, 39, 40. I don't know how old he is, but he's old. So that's pretty much your lead ball handler. He's out. That makes your roster even less strong. And, if Chris Paul's out, I don't really like the Suns offense that much because at that point you're just playing my turn, your turn basketball with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and that just doesn't work in the playoffs.
It's like a repeat of the Nets last year.
Yeah, when you lose your lead ball handler, you can't really do a lot. And the difference between the Nets last year and the Suns this year is they're less deep. Like they don't have a bench like that I really trust. You have Torrey Craig, Bismack Biyombo, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. And then, again, that contributes to DeAndre Ayton's production because there's no person who will be able to put DeAndre Ayton in better positions than Chris Paul. So I would, assuming Chris Paul is out, and I haven't, heard any updates as far as his groin injury, but assuming Chris Paul is out, I would expect the Nuggets to take care of business. Even if it is in Phoenix, it's not a good look. I'd probably lean Suns or Nuggets in 5.
Nuggets in 6. I think.
Nuggets 6. I think Kevin Durant and Devin Booker can take a game or two from you because they're that level of talent. They don't have. They also don't have anyone who can really guard Jokic. Ayton is cool, but he's kind of getting cooked. So they don't really have any defensive matchups either. They don't have the bench. They don't have the defense. So I don't know who I would. I don't know how I could justify picking the Suns to beat the Nuggets. Not this year. Next year, once they kind of fill out the roster and figure things out, I could see them being very successful. That's usually how it is when teams make big trades. You lose so much that it's hard to kind of just make that big of a trade and then just go on and win the same year. You kind of got to feel things out a bit and add to the roster. So Nuggets in 5. Nuggets in 5.
Lakers Warriors. What you looking
Let's
like?
talk about game 1.
Okay.
Notes on game 1. What are your initial thoughts? Because I presume you watched it.
Okay. So let's start off with Jordan Poole. Bo's doing good. And then with 10 seconds left in the game, pull up from the logo.
Played great. That's what makes me so mad about the shot is he had like his best game of the playoffs. The whole game I was thinking like, dang, Jordan Poole's really balling right now. He was great from 3. His shot selection up until that point was pretty okay. I mean, like, he had a couple shots early in the game where I was like, bro, you're doing too much already. And then he sat for a little bit and then he came back in. He was locked in. He had a couple shots where you could tell he wasn't even like really shooting it. He was going for fouls. He didn't get the fouls, but he still made the shots. So it's not a bad shot in that situation. But yeah, that last shot was rough. To
be fair though, to see what he's seeing, it was an open shot and it's in his range.
And he's been good all game, but the thing is, it's like, I don't hate the shot if there's like 4 or 5 seconds left. I hate the shot with 10 seconds left.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you can make a couple more passes and get a better look. Because that's just not a good look. It's not a favorable look. It's not a bad look, but it's not a favorable look. But as for the whole game, I think the big name that we really need to talk about is Anthony Davis. He played spectacular. Both sides of the ball.
He's playing like Shaq. Oh my God.
Offensively, he brought it. He didn't settle for too many jump shots, and even the jump shots he did take, he was hitting them. And then defensively, he was a deterrent at the rim. The Warriors really could not get into the paint with the combination of Vanderbilt and Davis. And then He also did a great job of keeping Kevon Looney off the offensive glass. Kevon Looney still had 7 offensive rebounds. I think 3 or 4 of them came on one play. So he did a really good job in comparison to how Kevon Looney was playing in Game 7 against Sacramento. So shout out him. D'Angelo Russell started off really rough, but got it together in the second half. Same thing with Austin Reeves. And then Jared Vanderbilt, like I was saying, did a really solid job on Steph. Steph
He is
played
so
decent,
good.
but not, up to Steph standards. He was coming off a 50-point game, and he didn't give you, a quarter of that production. So shout out all of those guys. How did you feel about LeBron's performance?
Wait, what was the stat line? Hold on.
Yeah, he finished with 22, 10, and 4. He shot like 36 from the field, and then he shot 12% from 3.
It's LeBron.
Can't really say anything. I'm kidding. But, oh, yeah, okay, I'm seeing it now. Yeah, it was kind of terrible. But he still managed to get 22 points. Crazy.
He didn't feel impactful, though. That's my thing. I was talking about that today
Yeah.
at school. I was like, because I was talking to someone at my table, and I was like, LeBron played pretty bad. He was like, okay, let me look at his stat line. He was like, yeah, 22, 10, and 5. What do you mean? I was like, you got to watch the game. It was not impactful. I didn't feel LeBron was the second best player on the Lakers yesterday. I felt like it was Vanderbilt, and then maybe D'Angelo Russell, and then maybe LeBron. He just settles for too many jump shots. Like, his jumper hasn't been falling all playoffs. Why are you shooting 8 threes? It's not your game.
I think he should be slashing more, but then that is also because he's aging.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. You can't go in overdrive every single play, but stop shooting the threes. You don't have to shoot it. And the thing is with LeBron, it's not like he's shooting late shot clock threes. He's shooting like
when the shot clock just starts. Yeah.
Like 20 seconds on the clock. It's like, that's a terrible shot. Stop shooting those. It's not your game. So, I mean, I would rather LeBron plays out of the post or something. Like, the 3-point jumper isn't falling. Obviously, he'll probably have a game where he hits, 3, 4, because that's LeBron. But I'm not rocking with the settling for 8 jumpers in a game, especially when you're going against a team that's as small as the Warriors, and the obvious strength of the team is to get into the paint. And even if you don't get a shot directly at the rim, LeBron's one of the best playmakers of all time. That gets a shot for Austin Reeves or Anthony Davis. You bring in all that pressure on yourself, you can throw it over the top to AD, and it benefits the team way more when LeBron's going to the rim or playing out of the post rather than shooting jump shots.
Speaking of which, they didn't hit many threes.
Oh yeah, the Lakers hit 6 threes the whole game.
Yeah.
And the Steph and Clay both hit 6 threes individually.
Yeah.
So it was a battle of like play styles. You have the Warriors who played very reliant on the 3 ball. I don't want to say overly reliant, but they shot 53s, and it's just because they couldn't really get in the paint because of the personnel the Lakers have. And then you have the Lakers who really just dominated in the paint just because they have that kind of personnel and they don't have crazy great floor spacing. I'm trying to look at my notes. I thought Klay Thompson was really good, especially in the second and third quarter. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's interesting. Go ahead.
I like how guys are putting Vanderbilt on because the way to stop Curry. No, you can't stop Curry. You can slow him down. That's
the best
way to. Yeah. The best matchup you can do is a tall, lengthy guy who's athletic
and who can move. He has a speed. He did a good job of chasing him around. There's a play that keeps going around where he's like chasing Steph, and then he gets a block, and then he goes back on to Steph. It's like, yeah, I like that matchup. I'm comfortable with that. The only issue with Vanderbilt is he's not a crazy great floor spacer. So if he's not, I can see times where he kind of gets played off the court, and they can't play him just because his offense is so poor. But if the defense is there, you kind of got to play him. And
how do you think the series is going to turn out?
Okay, so the Warriors aren't great on the road. They kind of figured it out against Sacramento. They won a couple road games, so I don't know how much you can take that into account. But it does really help that the Lakers, win a game at Chase because they are good at Chase Center. They're one of the best teams at home in the league, so that helps. Coaching, I got to go with the Warriors. I think Steve Kerr is going to make some adjustments to make it so that they can find some sort of way to guard the Lakers inside. Late in that Lakers Warriors game, Steve Kerr switched to a zone, and they really didn't score that much for the last 5 minutes. So I would anticipate that they start off game 2 in a zone, kind of force them to take jump shots, give Looney and Draymond an opportunity to kind of sit paint, and kind of just react to the passes that they're forcing them to make to guys like Vanderbilt or Reeves. Because if you can take the game out of Anthony Davis and LeBron's hands, that's the best way to, you know, win in the playoffs. That's the best way to win in the playoffs for every team. You know, you want to make whoever the worst starter is, you want to make them beat you. That's the strategy that the Knicks used against the Cavs. They tried to have Isaac Okoro beat them. So that's kind of how things go. And if you could have Austin Reeves, who's not bad, he's actually been really good this playoffs, and Jared Vanderbilt be the main threats to try and beat you, I would much rather that be the issue than LeBron and Anthony Davis having all those points in the paint. As for who I think is going to win, I would probably lean Warriors in 7. I think it's going to go 6 or 7. I think the coaching for Golden State is just that much better. I don't think Darwin Ham is a good coach pretty much at all. The Lakers really have no offense. I feel like they don't ever run any sort of plays or sets. They just run pick and rolls. The Warriors obviously have an offense that works. They're both teams are relatively deep. And like I said, it's going to come down to coaching. And I think Steve Kerr is going to make the right adjustments. That's going to make it difficult for Anthony Davis and just everyone in the paint to replicate the performance they had this game.
I agree with you. So Golden State in 6 or 7?
Yeah, probably 7. I'd say 7.
I'd say 7 because Schroeder dropped 20 that game, very surprisingly.
I didn't even talk about him. He did very solid.
Yeah. We all saw that one time when Roy dropped like 30 off the bench or something, right? Something crazy. Yeah, that's the potential that they have off the bench. But the Warriors have Jordan Poole. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, he's going to lose in the series.
He wins. Go ahead.
I wonder how that changes his confidence. That's why I'm kind of excited to see game 2, because I want to see if he's a little more or a little less confident to shoot the ball just in general, just based off of that game. I doubt it because he's kind of just a shooter and he really shoots those things regardless. But in that situation, that kind of does shake your confidence because I know he's hearing a lot of stuff about how he cost them the game, and he made a bad play at the end of the game, but there was more than that as to why they lost the game. So yeah, I'd probably lean Warriors in 7 coaching wise. I think that's the big difference for me. I also wonder how you feel about this. But do you think LeBron can still be the best player on the championship team, or is that phase of his career over? Because it's really weird to watch LeBron and he's not able to just do the things he used to be in the playoffs. I mean, I get it. I'm not surprised. He's 40, but I don't know if a LeBron-led team is gonna be a thing anymore in the playoffs. You really need those other guys to step up.
I think he's good, obviously, but it's emerging him in that second star, very good complement piece. You need shooters around him in order for him to work. And 3-and-D is what you'd want around LeBron. And AD as a big who's inside. He does his thing, locks up the inside, LeBron's there, gets rebounds, yada, 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 right? I don't think he can be the best guy on a playoff team because he's going to slow down eventually. And I don't want to say he's slowing down now.
He is.
He's lost a step.
As a playoff player, he's slowed down. I still think he's a great regular season player, but up to this point, he hasn't showed me that he can, turn it up in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even against the Grizzlies, I don't think he was great. It was kind of a mediocre LeBron series. And a mediocre LeBron series is still a pretty solid series for most players. If RJ Barrett if RJ Barrett put up the numbers LeBron did in the first round, I wouldn't really have anything to say. But it's LeBron, so we hold him to a higher standard. But I don't know. It's just offensively he can't really bring it as much anymore.
Mhm.
The jumper, especially when the jumper's not falling, it's not really good, nice to watch. It's not pleasing to the eye. When he's taking jump shots and they're not falling, it's just like, dude, you can't space the floor. You're not really that aggressive going to the paint anymore. And defensively, you can be good, but you're not that great anymore. So I think at this point, I'd say I'm pretty comfortable that LeBron can't be the best player. I won't say he can't be the best player. He can't be far and away the best player on the championship team. Like, it has to be a situation like this where it's like you can make an argument for both guys.
Mhm.
But if we're having a situation where it's like LeBron is clearly like this is clearly LeBron's team, then no, I wouldn't say that's the case.
Oh my God! The score for the Sixers Celtics game. Celtics won 121-87.
Sheesh! Oh my gosh! What did Tatum finish with? Like, who was doing it?
Tatum finished with
24.
7 points.
Oh no, 7
Jalen
points.
Brown had 25. It was a well-rounded game for everyone. Derek White 15, Marcus
Tatum,
Smart 15, Malcolm Brogdon 23,
6 man of the year. Shout out him.
Brett Williams 12, Peyton Pritchard 8,
Yeah,
Mike
they
Muscala 6.
really
Oh no,
well
Mike
rounded.
Muscala 3. I'm sorry, Luke Comet 6. Mike Trout just hit a home run.
A lot's going on right now. Huh?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up? Because we're at about a minute 16. A minute 15.
I think I'm good. Have you been watching any baseball?
I watched like a couple innings of a Red Sox game on opening day, but past that, no. But I do want to go to some baseball so we can kind of incorporate that into the podcast. But yeah, no, I haven't really been watching baseball.
Okay.
Shout out Max Muncy. He's been pretty solid, I think.
You didn't have him started for like forever.
Yeah. So shout out Max Muncy. I think he's been pretty decent. And shout out Tatis for coming back. Slam Diego is real. But yeah, I think that concludes this episode. We'll try and be back sooner than we were this time. It's just been busy because everyone's prom, graduation, all that. So we'll try. No promises, but we appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully we can continue this live thing going forward because I thought it was pretty cool.
For sure.
So yeah, see you guys soon.